Okay, so you know those crazy fad diets you see sometimes, like eating only cabbage soup for like a whole week? I'm Harry, and gotta say, I'm much more of a pizza and tacos kind of guy.
I'm Kimi, and hey, I do appreciate a good balanced diet, but some people, right, they really take their food choices like way further. They almost turn it into like a whole statement, like a lifestyle or even like a mission.
Yeah, I get that, and that kind of brings us to this deep dive today. We're gonna explore the life of this guy, Stanley Green.
The protein man of Oxford Street.
Right. He was the protein man of Oxford Street, and he basically turned his dietary beliefs into like a 25-year performance art piece right on the streets of London. And we got some pretty cool sources for this one, like his original pamphlets, some old newspaper articles, even some stuff from museum records. So buckle up. This is going to be a deep dive you won't forget.
It's funny. The thing that I find so interesting about Stanley Green is how he just kind of carved out this space for himself in one of the busiest, most bustling cities in the world, right? And he's advocating for a message that, let's be honest, most people probably thought was a little odd.
Totally. And that's what makes this whole thing so compelling,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning with Stanley Green's early life, which was surprisingly pretty normal. Born in 1915, grew up in London, went to school, even served in the Royal Navy during World War II.
Yeah, it seems like his time in the Navy, though, might have been like a really pivotal moment in his life. Like all the sources kind of suggest that Green was, I don't know, just taken aback by the open discussions of sexuality that he saw with all his fellow sailors. It was a huge contrast from, what society was like back then.
It's really interesting, yeah, to see how that experience, it seems like it just kind of planted these seeds for this later thing he became so focused on.
Dampening passion.
Yeah, yeah. Dampening what he saw as like this excessive passion in society. And he really thought that it all stemmed from a high protein diet.
Of all things.
Right.
Yeah, and after the war, he had all these, like, pretty normal jobs, right? Worked at the Fine Arts Society, then at Selfridges, even worked for the civil service for a bit. But then something changed in 1968. He was 53.
Okay, this is where it starts to get really good. He just drops everything and launches into this whole protein wisdom
Right.
campaign, basically becoming this, I don't know, like mythical figure on Oxford Street. Can you picture him like every single day cycling from his house in Northolt all the way to central London with this sandwich board like strapped to his bike? The dedication.
And remember, this was the 60s and 70s, way before, people had their fitness trackers and protein shakes were all the rage. Like, he was basically advocating for this low-protein diet when most people, I think, just associated protein with being strong and healthy.
Yeah, and his diet was like super intense. Mostly steamed vegetables, pulses, a pound of apples every single day. Not exactly what you think of when you hear protein man, right?
Definitely not. It's almost funny when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
But his whole focus wasn't on getting ripped or anything like that. It was about, like, getting rid of what he thought was the root of all these societal problems, basically, all this excessive passion fueled by protein. He even said in his pamphlets that, like, eating a low protein diet would lead to a less aggressive world, like a more harmonious world.
And speaking of those pamphlets, Sunday was like his big production day, right? He would literally spend the whole day printing his little self-published pamphlet, Eight Passion Proteins with Care, on this homemade printing press in his house. Apparently, it caused quite a stir with his neighbors.
84 editions of this pamphlet over 2 decades, and he sold thousands of copies, sent them to everyone, the prime minister, even the pope.
I mean, the guy was prolific. And what I find really interesting is that he wasn't just like preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
I mean, he took his message right to the heart of London, right there on Oxford Street, meeting all kinds of people.
You got to have some serious courage to just stand on a street corner every day, rain or shine, telling everyone about a low-protein diet for a better society. This wasn't just about food for him, it was his whole philosophy of life. Oh, you can just imagine the reactions he must have gotten. I bet some people thought it was funny, some people were probably curious, and I'm sure some people found him super annoying, maybe even got a little hostile.
Right. The sources paint this really interesting picture of Oxford Street back then. It was just like this crazy mix of people and opinions, and then you have Stanley Green right in the middle of it all with his sandwich board and his pamphlets, adding to the craziness.
For sure, some people probably just saw him as like a harmless weirdo, a classic London character. But others, maybe they thought he was being disruptive, maybe even a nuisance. I mean, there are even stories of people spitting on his hat and throwing things at him.
That's awful.
Yeah.
But it's wild that he just kept going, even after all that negativity. I mean, he even got arrested a couple of times for blocking the sidewalk. But he really thought he was doing some good for society by spreading his protein wisdom.
He even complained about being arrested. He said it was unfair because he was doing such important work. I mean, it's kind of funny, right?
It is kind of funny.
But it also shows just how strongly he believed in all this.
Like he was on a mission or something. Like he was the only one who knew the truth about protein, and he had to warn everyone.
Totally. And the thing is, despite all those challenges, Stanley Green actually developed a following, especially among Londoners who, started to appreciate this quirky guy on Oxford Street.
He became a real fixture, part of the city.
Yeah.
People recognized him. I
What?
bet some people even looked forward to seeing him. There's something kind of charming about that, you know? Like he found a sense of belonging in this huge city.
Oh, totally. And he got interviewed by all these big newspapers, even featured in this documentary fiction film by this artist, Aluna Rollins. And get this, the fashion house Red or Dead, they used his slogan, less passion from less protein, in one of their collections. He became like an accidental fashion icon.
That's so funny. I love that. He went from being this oddball to this, recognized figure in London, even celebrated in a way.
And his story really says something about, I don't know, just how individuals relate to society. Like how someone who doesn't fit in can eventually become accepted, even admired.
And it shows how important public spaces are for that kind of thing to happen. Like Oxford Street, with all those different people and ideas flowing through it, it gave Stanley Green a stage to share his message. And it gave society a chance to kind of grapple with it, even if they didn't agree with him.
Right. Unfortunately, Stanley Green's time on Oxford Street came to an end in 1993. He passed away at 78. But his story goes way beyond just his physical presence on those streets, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Even after he died, people were still fascinated by him. Like major newspapers wrote obituaries about him, recognizing how unique he was to London life. And the Museum of London, they took all his stuff, his pamphlets, even his printing press. They preserved it all for future generations.
I know. The writer Lynn Truss, she even said he should be added to the last paragraph of Charles Dickens' novel Little Dorrit. That book takes place partly on Oxford Street, so it's like she wanted to make him a permanent part of London's literary history.
What a legacy, right?
Yeah.
As someone who could have easily been dismissed as just another quirky Londoner, he really left a mark. I mean, it's amazing that his message, what some people might have just thought was like the ramblings of some eccentric guy, it actually resonated with enough people that he ended up in a museum and maybe even a classic novel.
Yeah, I think people are just fascinated by people who, dare to be different, people who challenge conventional thinking and do their own thing, especially in a world that constantly pressures us to fit in.
For sure. And Stanley Green's story, it's way more than just this tale of a quirky Londoner.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about how we deal with different viewpoints in public spaces. How we react to people who challenge what we think is normal. And have we kind of lost something in this modern world with all these online echo chambers where we can just avoid opinions we disagree with?
Exactly right. He didn't have a Twitter or a blog or anything. He just went out there and talked to people face to face, shared his beliefs, directly and honestly. It makes you wonder if there's something powerful about that, that kind of real, unfiltered interaction, even if what they're saying is a little out there.
It's like he was this living example of thinking outside the box, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
He took this ordinary thing, this sandwich board, and he turned it into a platform for this unique way of looking at society.
And he did it for 25 years. Rain or shine, that's serious commitment. He believed in his message so much, way beyond getting famous or making money. He really thought he was making the world a better place.
Yeah. And it just shows you that one person, even without a lot of money or power, can still make a difference, start conversations, and leave a mark on their community, even a city as big and diverse as London.
He might not have convinced everyone to go low protein, but he definitely got people thinking, questioning things, seeing things from a different perspective,
Yeah, maybe that's his real legacy, just as a reminder that even when you're busy with everyday life, there's still space for people who are different, people who challenge the status quo, people who remind us that there are so many ways to live a meaningful life.
So true. Next time you're walking down a busy street, keep an eye out for those people who, stand out from the crowd, who maybe have something interesting to say, even if it's a little weird. You never know. You might just meet your own version of the Protein Man, ready to, challenge your ideas and make you think about things in a new way.
Well, that was quite a trip, learning about Stanley Green, the Protein Man of Oxford Street. Really makes you think.
It's been great diving into this with you.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep an open mind. Who knows what other fascinating stories are out there just waiting to be discovered?